the use of restraints and seclusions. In this debate, we will be discussing both the pros and cons regarding the use of restraints and seclusions. With us in the debate today, supporting its use, is Jennifer as attacker, Lauren as approver, and Sony as a stater. On the opposing position, we have myself, Shailene, as a stater, and Adela as the approver and attacker. During this debate, each side will have a turn to discuss their position on the matter. We will begin with the proponents as they discuss their findings to support their position. Following, the opponents will have an opportunity to defend their standing on my signal to counter. Each side will have approximately 5 minutes to state their position and evidence. We will now have Sony speak on the findings of their position.
Hi, everyone. First, I would like to begin by defining restraint and seclusion. Vollmer et al. In 2011, in the Association for Behavior Analysis International Position Statement on Restraint and Seclusion provide the definitions which we will be using today. Restraint involves physically holding or securing the individual either A, for a brief period of time to interrupt and intervene with severe problem behavior, or B, for an extended period of time using mechanical devices to prevent otherwise uncontrollable problem behavior. For example, self-injurious behavior that has the potential to produce serious injury. Seclusion involves isolating an individual from others to interrupt and intervene with problem behavior that places the individual or others at risk of harm. When it comes to restraints, an individual must be trained in procedures to use protective holds, blocks, transport, or escort an individual safely. For the safety of both the client and the professionals, it is important to get the proper training. Lauren will be speaking about CPI and the need for de-escalation procedures. We are not proposing restraining an individual for overturning a table once and calmly sitting down. We are advocating the use where the individual poses an imminent danger to himself, herself, or others in the immediate vicinity. When all other strategies have been tried and failed, restraint and seclusion become necessary to prevent imminent harm. We do not want to harm our clients, but we also cannot sit back and watch or allow them to hurt themselves or others. As I stated, our position is that restraints and seclusion should be used as a last resort per Code 4.08c. Those who will be applying these strategies need to be properly trained to prevent injury to the client and to themselves as per Code 4.08d. Also, protocols should be in place for the removal of these procedures as quickly as possible as stated in Code 4.08d. Decisions should be informed by the data and not an emotional response. As behavior analysts, we have an obligation under Code 1.01 to rely on scientific knowledge, and Code 2.09 relates to the client's right to effective treatment, which may include restraint and/or seclusion based on the literature per Code 2.09a. Furthermore, Code 1.05f state personal beliefs about restraint and seclusion should not compromise their duty to provide effective treatment per Code 2.09a and c. To support the use of restraints and seclusion, the following points will be discussed: the history of the use of restraints and seclusion and its use in imminent danger to self or others, the quality of the clients and their families' lives, and the issue of do no harm.
Okay, you will now be hearing from me, Shailene, as the con stater. Okay. Opposed to the idea of using restraints and seclusions, we have done thorough research and have identified cases in which the use of physical restraints has caused serious injury to the individual. With a series of events in which restraints weren't used appropriately and without proper training, we stand firm in our stance that restraints and seclusion should not be an option. To ensure the safety and dignity of the clients in which we work with, to support our stance, we will be presenting the following points. Sunland, Miami case in which individuals were mistreated and the use of restraints and seclusions weren't used with appropriate training and protocols. The Wyatt versus Stickney case, which addresses rights for individuals with mental disabilities to receive effective and proper treatment. On this topic, we might also consider the companies that have been created to address aggressive behaviors because the reality is that they do exist. We might consider CPI, QBS, and all other safety care certifications that have been set in place to address these. Across all companies, prior to implementation of restraints, it is very crucial to implement de-escalation procedures as well as antecedent management. Antecedent management being of the most important, as we want to prevent escalation, not only address the situation once a crisis has been reached. There are many events that have led to the ongoing debate upon this topic, to also include a study by Ray Myers and Rapaport. In this study conducted, 1,040 individuals completed a survey on their treatment at a psychiatric facility. From this study, about 73% of the individuals reported that upon the implementation of restraints and seclusion, they were not dangerous to themselves or others. They reported that the staff had said their behaviors were inappropriate but not dangerous. The rest of the respondents reported only saying that their behaviors were not dangerous at the time. We will now be hearing from Lauren on the pro side.
I myself, as well as many people in this debate, have worked with people with individuals who engage in self-interest and harmful behaviors to others. The question we all want to answer is, how do we make sure our client and others around them remain safe? When these behaviors occur, it is our responsibility as professionals to make sure that clients do not harm themselves and/or others. It is the opinion of the pro side of this debate that the safest and most efficient way to do this is by utilizing the use of appropriate seclusion and restraints. That is not to say that professionals should engage in seclusion and restraint practices by default. However, when appropriately employed both technically and in response to self-interest and harmful behaviors to others, seclusion and restraint is the safest and most evidence-based option. I would like to begin by discussing functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans. Professionals conduct FBAs and create BIPs in order to target problem behaviors. These plans are created on an individual basis. In some cases, seclusion and restraint are part of these behavior plans. This is a last resort measure and ensures that no one gets hurt. The point of the plan is to establish what a student's triggers are and how the situation can be de-escalated before it turns into a scenario where seclusion and restraint practices are necessary. This plan may include antecedent interventions, reinforcement schedules, incentives, replacement behaviors, etc. The plan will also include specific language that adults should use or not use when attempting to de-escalate a situation. If the situation moves into a crisis in which the student is harming themselves or people around them, then and only then is when seclusion and restraint should be employed. Supporting this claim, myself, Sony, and Jen found a study that was conducted by Richard Fox and James Mindell, in which a behavior plan was created to address the aggressive behaviors of a 13-year-old boy with autism. The plan put in place included consistent and frequent positive reinforcement, a token system allowed for the child to make choices, response cost, overcorrection, and when needed, physical restraint. With this plan, the boy's aggressive behavior decreased to 0 or close to 0 incidences, and the boy was able to make sufficient growth in many academic areas as a result. In addition, these results have been maintained for over a year. Seclusion and restraint was used in this study when appropriate and in response to self-harm or harmful behaviors of others, and contributed to the success of the behavior plan, not to mention kept the child and others around him safe. Next, I'd like to discuss the technical act of seclusion and restraint. First of all professionals working with children who have the potential to go into crisis behavior, which result in a seclusion and restraint, must be properly trained. There are many different kinds of programs that exist, including CPI, PMT, etc. I have worked in schools and behavior clinics, and in each of these places, my employers have made this a requirement of my employment. These practices follow the idea that seclusion and restraint are a last resort scenario and stress the importance of the above description, which includes other interventions put in place to de-escalate a child before it becomes appropriate to seclude or restrain them. In this training, one learns how to safely restrain and transport a child so that the child is not harmed in any way. The technicality of these restraints have been modified and changed over the years in order to make them efficient and safe for each person involved. In addition, parents are at a loss of what to do with their children when they are engaging in self-injurious or harmful behaviors. Here is a video discussing family members' opinions on seclusion and restraint being included in their child's behavior plan.
Please describe your child's behaviors.
Well, she had frequent meltdowns, which meant falling out, kicking. She could hurt herself, hurt other people. She would thrash around. She would also run anywhere, if to an open door, out into the street, out into, parking lot, anything, run towards cars, just no thought of safety.
Okay. So what concerns did you have about your child's behavior? Like you mentioned eloping. So she was eloping into the streets.
Yep.
Is there a specific time where one event might have concerned you more?
Well, I was frequently concerned about her maybe getting hit by a car. I was also concerned about items falling on her because when she took off running, she would not pay attention to objects. So falling objects could happen. She could injure herself on, corners of things, tables, anything. Just, I had a lot of safety concerns.
Okay. How did your child's behavior affect your child and your family?
Well,
Any limitations?
yeah, there were a lot of limitations. It meant that sometimes it was better to leave her at home with my mother or another adult because she did not behave in a socially acceptable way, certainly did not behave in a way that was good for her own safety. And it just could turn what should be a pleasant occasion into something that was a disaster. So that was a constant concern.
Yeah. What treatments were used in school?
Well,
And were they effective?
a lot of things were tried. Rewards could be tried, but because my daughter's meltdowns she would be fine 1 minute, and in the space of a second, she was having a full-blown meltdown. There was no warning, and no one knew what was setting her off, so it was kind of hard to deal with her. She also, once she was in a meltdown, you couldn't really reason with her or negotiate with her or promise her anything. There was just no awareness about what was going on around her. So that was a major issue. We sometimes had to use restraints because nothing else seemed to work, and we wanted to keep her safe.
So what was your initial reaction when the school used restraints?
Well, of course, like any parent, it wouldn't be my first choice, but if everything else wasn't working, we had to make that safety was a priority.
Okay. Did you see any changes in your child after the implementation of restraints?
Yes, it was effective because she didn't like it. So once, if she knew that was going to be the result, she was actually listening more and understood that, failure to fall in line would result in something she didn't like. She would begin to actually pay attention to what you were saying. And then we were able to use other methods so that she could conform her behavior.
And how did the implementation of restraints affect your family?
Well, it resulted in her listening better. We were able to use other forms of discipline, timeouts or rewards, things of that nature, because she actually was paying more attention to us.
So they were able to re-implement token procedures,
Yes.
reinforcement procedures,
Yes.
token economies to,
Yes,
to help her with those behaviors.
absolutely.
And were they trained in the implementation of the restraints?
Yes,
And did they train you as well?
yes. I was advised of the way to use restraints safely.
That's great. And now that she's much older, do you have any regrets about using restraints? Letting them use restraints at school?
No, because it was for her safety. I mean, failure to do something could have resulted in her having serious injury. So, you know, that's always my first priority is keeping her safe.
Okay. So would you, based on the fact that restraint was used and the behaviors decreased, is there any doubt in your mind that it was necessary at the time?
I know it was necessary because we did not have her attention. And because her behavior changed so suddenly, there wasn't we were always in a situation where we're reacting to her meltdown. But there was no warning it was coming, and we would have to get her attention. Until we had used restraints, we didn't have her attention. We couldn't negotiate. We couldn't, there was nothing to be done at that point. We tried so many other ways, but this was actually the most effective way at the time to keep her safe. So I don't have any regrets about that.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
When professionals create proper behavior intervention plans, as well as get training on the proper way to employ seclusion and restraint and the use of seclusion and restraint is effective and safe to use with children who are engaging in self-injurious and harmful behaviors. The use of restraints allows BCBAs to follow the ethical guidelines created for us by BCBA by doing no harm to our clients, relying on scientific knowledge, maintaining competence through professional development, describing conditions for behavior change program success, and considerations to regarding punishment procedures.
Okay, we will now hear from Adela on the con side.
Okay. Wait, stop. We have to redo it. Your volume was off. You're muted right now. You're still muted. Hold on. Can you say anything?
We can't hear you. You're still on mute.
You're still muted.
We can see your microphone saying
Can you see me okay? I mean, can you
now.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay.
Got
It
it.
all started in Florida in the 1970s. The Sunland Miami scandal demonstrated clearly how individuals with developmental disabilities were abused in inhumane ways.
Wait, let's just. We're gonna have to redo it.
Redo everything.
We have to. Yeah, I think we have to redo it.
Ugh.
Um.
I was thinking, that's why I was like, just